Thank you, everybody, for joining today. My name is Tony Lauro, as Pete said, and Pete, thanks for the kind words. I actually wrote them, so it's very kind of you to say so many nice things about me. We're really glad that you guys are here today, and we're thankful for all the sponsors and partners that were able to help us put this together. We're going to talk today about social engineering, and my approach to this topic is lighthearted and fun, and should be kind of unique to what you may have seen before. So as Pete mentioned, if you guys have any questions, let's try to save those to the end, just because we have a quick 30 minutes. I want to get through the content. But I'd love to hear your feedback, suggestions, criticisms, anything towards the end, if you don't mind. So I've on the fly changed the title of this presentation to Securing Your Carbon Capital, and I'll get to why that title makes sense in just a minute. But if we look at social engineering, I think something that's kind of interesting is that there's a lot of different types of social engineering, and we've all seen, maybe the videos at a security conference of a person dressing up as an AT&T linesman and getting into a building that they're not supposed to get into in order to check some phone cables, or maybe someone going into the back room of an electronics store because they have a clipboard and they say there was corporate. But a lot of our digital ecosystem has been driving a lot of the social engineering techniques back towards the humans that are sitting at desks behind the firewall. And that's kind of a key point of this particular presentation, is that the users being targeted are usually being targeted because of where they sit inside of an environment, or potentially what data they have access to. So there's a lot of different techniques. Phishing is one that we've probably all heard about. This is not something you used to do with your grandpa, at the shore. This is, the practice of sending a fraudulent email with the hopes of sounding legitimate, and then getting a response and maybe trying to get the person to reveal some information that they probably shouldn't normally reveal. Vishing is another one, and this is pretty interesting, and I'm not making up these names, but vishing is the act of leaving a voicemail. And around this time of year, you guys have probably seen some of this yourself. So people will leave a voicemail, and they'll say, well, your tax return, there's something wrong with it. Or maybe they'll say, we're from the IRS, etc. And again, there's a lot of key parts of that make that possible and make it more legitimate. And one of these techniques is baiting. So baiting is the idea that I'm going to interact with you in a way that's going to entice you to respond. So one may be, you're going to get arrested, please call back immediately because your tax return is fraudulent. Another one may be pretexting. And pretexting is basically the concept of saying, okay, I'm going to try to convince you as much as possible that I am who I'm pretending to be. And this process usually involves a bit of impersonation. So I'm going to share with you guys a voicemail that I got that I thought was quite interesting. I'm not entirely sure how well it's going to come through on the audio, but this is a voicemail I got from about 5 different phone numbers, and of course I didn't answer them, and this is what it said.
Our department is investigating you and your family. We had tried to notify you regarding these issues in previous 6 months, but we had never got a response from you. So it has been considered as an intentional fraud, and a lawsuit has been filed under your name by the United States government. You may call our department number on 903-634.
All right, so we'll mute that. Did that come through okay? And it was a little glitchy on my my voicemail as well, but did you all hear that?
Tony, we could hear it okay.
Excellent,
yep.
Excellent. So this is an example of vishing, but they're also using pretexting, saying that they're from a fraud department of the U.S. government, and also baiting, saying that a lawsuit has been opened by the U.S. government against me and my family And I was like, wow, you brought my family into this. Now we're getting serious. So that's kind of an example of some of the things we've seen. So what has the industry seen as a whole? So the Verizon DBIR, it's a report that's done every year, and this is shared information from Verizon customers that is put into a report, and this particular topic covers phishing. And so they said 4% of people will click on any given phishing campaign. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but anyone who works in security, that the defender has to get it right every single time, and an attacker only has to get it right one time, right, in order to breach your system. So 4% may not seem like a big deal, but it definitely is something to care about. Another stat I thought was interesting was in 16 minutes, the first user will click on a phishing campaign. And the flip side of that is the savvy user, the one who's like, hey, this looks strange, they'll respond and probably escalate the issue after about 28 minutes. So there's a gap there of the first time that someone is actually clicking on the email and maybe, executing this link or, whatever the actual email does versus the time that someone will be notified on the security team. So we'll talk in a little bit about kind of the layers of control that need to go into place to help that not be such an impactful process. And the last piece here is a recommendation from them, which is very sound. Make your people the first line of defense. Do they know how important security is to your brand, what it means to your business, and basically get them on board. So this speaks to security awareness training and different training options to help make sure they know what to look for. So we're going to go into a topic that the title of the presentation is Securing Your Carbon Capital. Andy Ellis, the CISO of Akamai, released a blog post a little while back, and it's a concept of carbon versus silicon, and basically understanding what type of organization you actually have. So the first type of organization is silicon, and this has to do with computers, right? So the computers, if they are the main driving force of your business, there's probably a lot of policy and restrictions put around how computers function. And you can think of maybe like a call center, right? So where, people are calling in and there's a script that takes place. The people have to, the inbound callers have to go through this process. They verify their identity, then they get help, right? This might be one example. And computers are kind of part of that process by which, you're making tickets, you're entering information, et cetera. The other type of organization is a carbon organization. So this is where people are the main resource within the company. Now, some might argue people are always the most valuable resource. I get that. I've read that book as well. But the idea here is that computers augment the knowledge workers. So the real skin in the game is the people, and the computers are just tools. So think of like a software company, something like that, where people are creating content, or maybe a marketing company. They're creating content, they're putting it out there, and computers just help them do their job. Knowing what type of organization you are can actually help you plan what type of training is most appropriate. So I'm going to go into a couple processes here, and this is actually spelled out on the social engineering. Basically, it's an execution process. And it says the first step in any social engineering campaign is information gathering. So this is actually much like a cyber attack, where the first step is information gathering. But this is where an attacker will learn a little bit about you. They're going to find out, maybe you have a dog. They're going to find out you're a member of the same maybe car club that they are, or maybe a member of the same bank. Or the flip side of this is they may just assume that if a certain million people in the U.S. are a member of this particular bank, sending out a blanket email saying that they're from this bank's security organization might be a very easy way to just get lucky, right? The second step is to establish trust and build a rapport with the victim. And this is very important. Again, this can be anywhere from, dressing up with a hard hat that has the AT&T logo and then carrying a clipboard, and maybe you've got a tool belt with some, lineman's butt sets on there. But this concept is very a very old concept. The idea of establishing this trust and rapport is how con men in the past used to be able to carry out their cons. So the next step is exploitation. So this is where the victim actually starts to take part in the attack themselves, and by taking part in this attack, they're starting to believe the lies, so to speak. And then the last part is execution. So what happens next? So what happens after the campaign is successful, and what kind of how does the attacker get that information back to them? So we're going to talk about a real-world attack here. This is actually something that's happening right now. It's an SMS phishing campaign, and this is actually known as smishing, and I'm not just making up a name there. So smishing is the idea that I'm going to send a text message pretending to be someone else in the hopes that someone's going to click on the link and follow my instructions. So I know that this language seems foreign. This is actually an attack that's going on. I'm seeing this on Twitter. It's going on against Rabobank. And effectively, the text message comes in, and this is the first form of pre-texting, right? It's saying, hi, we're from Rabobank Security. We've noticed a problem with your account. It may have been compromised. Please click here to verify your credentials. And if this doesn't already smell fishy, I don't know what does. But the next step is, if you click on it, it takes you to this landing page. Now, if you're familiar with the Rabobank landing page, it looks exactly like this. And so this may seem legitimate to a user. In fact, this process of establishing trust, the attackers always try to go the extra mile here. So in this particular case, they actually registered a domain, cp2-rabobank.net. So it's probably not the same domain name that is owned by the company. And this brings up another type of risk that needs to be identified. When you have web properties that you publish and put on the internet, does anyone in your organization check to see if there's any other web properties that are impersonating your own web property? So if you're a retail chain, or if you're in the restaurant business, or if you're a bank, are there other websites that are pretending to be yours? And typically they do that with common misspellings or maybe different things in the front or in the back. But the goal here is to impersonate and establish trust so that the user is more likely to enter their input that you're asking. So there's several companies out there. Mark Monitor is one that I've used in the past. They actually will scour the internet, and they find domains that look close to yours, either with common misspellings, et cetera, or maybe using the logos, or even impersonating the look and feel. And then they will send you a report, and then you say, yes, take down, take down, take down. You put a checkbox, and they will do the legal takedown action against those domains. But that's very important, because someone else impersonating your domain could definitely lead to a more believable campaign against you. So is this working? So on the Twitters, we saw the most recent tweets here. They're Rabobank talking to their users. Hey, we understand you've received this email. You didn't click on it, did you? That's concerning, right? So hopefully not. And hopefully there's some kind of methodology in place that can help them deal with these types of problems. So one thing happened pretty recently. One of our own security researchers named Larry Cashdollar, and again, that's not a made-up name. He's probably the luckiest guy in the world with the last name of Cashdollar. It's pretty cool. But they actually targeted Larry Cashdollar, and I say they, attackers, this may be random and may be directed directly towards him, with a phishing attack. So let's take a look at how that happened. So Larry receives an email on his mobile device that says, hey, your Gmail account has been logged into from a Windows device. Please check this out. And then, of course, verify your activity or consult the activity. Now, according to the blog post, which is linked here, now this may be social engineering that I'm sending you to a bit.ly link, but I think it's easier than typing the whole thing. I have them listed at the end as well. But Larry mentions that on his mobile device, this looked like a legitimate email. He could not see the full sender address. Things are truncated. And again, the actual landing page was formatted to his mobile device. But when he logged into Google and opened up the email, he could see some interesting things. So one, Facebook Secure at Hotmail does not seem like a legitimate email address for a Google account security alert. But he realized that this was a classic case of pretexting and baiting. One, I'm pretending to be Google account security. And two, your email has been logged into by an unknown device. So that baiting is basically hoping that he will actually click on this link. Well, knowing Larry and the fact that he is a security researcher, guess what? He did click on the link. So he clicks on the link, and it took him to this page. Now, this is another interesting form of pretexting here, or impersonation. The attackers are using Google Translate to take a page that they have specified and send it through Google Translate. You'll see the URL up at the top, but within the search bar down below is the name of the actual site. So again, from a mobile device, this would look exactly like a regular Gmail login page or Google login page. Also, the fact that it's a valid Google domain might give even further trust to the attacker for someone to enter their credentials. But if you look at the full URL of the link, it was running through Google user content, and then it's pulling up the translate.google page. And then the link that it's actually injecting here is the web page of the attacker's toolkit. Now, he noticed one other thing in his research is that the login page actually looked like one of Google's older login prompts. Again, this may be an indication that the toolkit was a little bit outdated, and we see that quite often. But he said, what the heck? I'm going to enter in my information here. So he went through the process, entered in his credentials, and the next page that popped up, this is actually on if it looks like a strange web browser, this is on a lab machine. But the next step, after he validated his credentials and logged into Google, it brought him to Facebook. Again, this is quite strange. You'll notice there is a little slash over the secure page. The URL has been obfuscated because this is an actually payload URL that we didn't want to share. But this form is another PHP web form that the attacker basically put together to now, hey, let's say if we can get your Gmail credentials, maybe we can get your Facebook credentials. So one of those has to work. Now, what's going on in the background here, first thing, you'll notice that this login page looks a little bit different than a regular Facebook login page. He mentioned from the mobile device, it was formatted correctly. It looked great. So if this was a purely SMS phishing campaign, somebody's going to buy this, right? Somebody's going to think that this is a legitimate request. But what he did was he viewed the source on this particular page and saw that it was a nice little PHP script. So what it's doing is it's taking the inputs, and the first thing it's going to send an email to the scammer's email address. It's also taking information from the actual login form, collecting the credentials, and sending it off to be collected. So this kind of attack is pretty common. In fact, in this day and age, when everything is being automated, it would make even more sense that a lot of the social engineering techniques are switching towards kind of the digital execution as opposed to the old school, face-to-face, in-person social engineering that you might think about. And if you want to see what the results of this email were, he went ahead and inputted his information, and it captured his email address, password, phone number, which was another thing on the previous form, and then alternate email, and also the user agent of the actual device that he was connecting from. So this is something else that's interesting. When you look at bot activity and maliciously created requests on the internet, the goal is to look like a valid user. Now, if I'm actually performing a credential abuse attack, like an account takeover or password stuffing or whatever the case is, it would behoove me to try to impersonate the type of device that this user's actually logging into. So even though this looks like an older toolkit, the process of capturing the user agent that the actual user is connecting from seems like a pretty advanced step, with the hopes of carrying on this same process to log in as the account in the future. So the things we need to remember, ultimately, training is going to be the first step. We need to let users know that there are threats from social engineering, and they can come in the way of, someone making a phone call or someone coming up to the door saying they're a visitor. And it's okay, I'll wait in the lobby. And then when the reception person goes to the restroom, they just walk into the building. Maybe that's a threat. But this also should include malware and phishing. Malware and phishing campaigns have been on the rise. There was a stat, I guess I forgot to include it, but there was a stat from the Verizon DBIR about malware and phishing campaigns and the percentage of uptick year over year. It's not a huge percentage, but it is growing. And I think this is because of kind of the digital economy, so to speak, and how users are so used to doing everything automated. Password resets are automated. Account creation's automated. Everything's automated. The next step is expert assistance. So this is where the users, if they feel like there might be a problem, can they interface with the security team? Is there an abuse at email or a phishing at email, or maybe a security team at company.com email address? If someone spots something, they need to be able to give that feedback to the security team so that something can be that attack can be researched. And then at the very least, the users need some kind of safe redirection or validation steps. So when they go through the identification of a problem, in this instance, just think of someone's making a phone call into a help desk, for instance. What are the steps that you have documented that are going to help a user run through the process of validating an inbound caller? Do they call them back on a number that's listed in their contacts? Do they send a link to their corporate email address to make them click the link to be able to perform a reset? What do those options look like? And is it fishy if someone says, hey, I'm traveling, I don't have access to my computer, can you help me get logged in anyway? They need to be able to identify that and give them an easy out so that there's no repercussions for them sending someone on or escalating a process or a caller or a requester through a separate process. And then the last piece is creating a form of coverage. There's got to be some kind of security tools in place or process in place that's looking for malware, phishing, or phishing campaign activity, because there are going to be things that slip through the cracks. No matter how well you train your people, and no matter what type of business you are, it's very easy for someone to say, hey, your Amazon delivery has been delayed. Click here to find out more. What are the percentage of people? I was doing a talk in D.C. Last year, and I said, if you got an email that said your Amazon delivery is being delayed, raise your hand if you have an active Amazon delivery. And a huge percentage of people in the audience raised their hands, basically indicating that, yeah, this is a pretty good way to get someone to click on something. Again, pretext and baiting. So I wanted to share a couple links. Again, there's the shortened version, so if you just take a screenshot, you can type them a lot easier. Socialengineer.org is a website that's put together by the security community and a group of really nice people that their goal is to train people on the risks of social engineering. They actually hold a social engineering contest that's done live at events like Black Hat and DEF CON every year, which is quite interesting. But the goal is to get that general knowledge out there in the public. And the particular link here is a link to the framework for social engineering processes and how that works. The next link is to Larry Cashdollar's blog post that I was talking about. And the last one is to the Verizon DBIR report that I had mentioned. Anyway, I want to open it up for questions now, and I'll turn it back over to Pete.
Great job, Tony. Fantastic work as always. We're right at the half-hour mark, so good job on the pace. I'm going to go ahead and steal presenter rights here. I got one polling question we're going to throw out and then move over to the live Q&A. And this is a friendly reminder, a great chance if you have any questions for Tony or myself, go ahead and enter those in the chat system, and we'll go ahead and read them out. I've got a couple here that I want to read out to Tony here shortly. So let me see if I can get this to load. And the question is, and Tony, I'm going to ask you to read it again only because I don't see great visibility in this, but have you ever identified an instance where information may have been given to an outside party outside of protocol? And there's 2 no's and a couple yeses on that. And again, Tony, I'm going to ask you to kind of run through this particular poll, then we'll open up the lines for a Q&A session. So let's give everybody a couple seconds here. Assuming, Tony, you can see the poll okay on your end?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, you know, the purpose of this poll question is, you know, the thing we like to gauge, you know, when helping organizations deal with this type of stuff is ultimately, like, what's your current process? You know, if someone accidentally clicks on a link, are they deemed naughty and fired from the organization? Or is there like a positive reinforcement model for people that do identify a phishing email and forward it to the security team? Like, what's the approach? And I think it's, again, it's important to understand where you kind of sit in that process in order to make any improvements, obviously. So, all right, that should be enough time. Let's see the results here. Okay, 17% said no. Thank you for your honesty. And 8% said yes. And let me see here. Yeah, it's very strange how these are read out. Yeah, so 17% said no, 18% yes, and the other percentage of people chose not to respond. So, well, that's good. It looks like you know, there is room for improvement. You know, this sort of thing, again, the whole goal is to raise awareness and help people understand what the problems are, and make sure you have some kind of compensating controls as well to help with these issues.
Perfect.
All right, any more questions?
Tony should be able. Yeah, I'm going to open up the lines now. Let me know if you can see my screen, and then we're going to unmute everybody. I do have a question through the chat. It's related to our services division and whether or not Akamai can help support any organization in terms of security awareness or social engineering, and do we have any sort of training available that customers can take advantage of?
So that's a great question. So Akamai works in this space primarily by looking at the downstream risks of social engineering. So effectively looking at what happens when someone clicks a link or inadvertently executes a payload. We watch that outbound traffic go into the internet and identify if it's bad or not. But we also do training around the risks of phishing and these email campaigns and social engineering techniques, et cetera. It's on a as needed basis as organizations feel like they want to interact with us. We definitely have the resources available to help share that knowledge with your teams.
Thank you, Tony. And if you guys see on your screen, if you have any additional input for Tony or myself, there's our email address. And once again, thank you to our partners who helped facilitate and contribute to today's presentation. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the lines. If you've got any questions for Tony, it's a great opportunity to ask him.
All right, you put everybody on the spot. Well, hey, honestly, if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to give you a call back or chat offline at any time if you have any questions. So we appreciate everybody. And Pete, thank you for your help. And to our partners, thank you guys as well.
Great. And as a last reminder, we're going to go ahead and contact everyone who attended today, see if you want a copy of today's presentation. We'd also love to get your feedback in terms of what you thought the material was and how it was presented, and always looking to improve these. My last reminder is we're going to be doing these once a month. Love to see you for the next round. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
LifeSteps